Welcome again, students, to Contemporary World Religions. This session, we get the opportunity to have a dialogue with Dr. Chris Chari. He's a retired oncologist who lives here in the Estero area, and he will talk to us about the Hindu traditions and the faith system, and it's a plethora of beliefs that kind of runs the gamut, I would say. As I explained to them, Chris, in a different video, it's almost, to say Hinduism it's not unitary, it's not like everybody who's in this family of religious beliefs believes this way. And you're an example of a more philosophical approach, I would say, to it. Is that correct?
Very much so.
Right. Well, Chris, thank you again for doing this.
It is my privilege.
Well,
thank you for this honor.
Well, it's great. And the students will get to know a lot more by seeing it lived out, this philosophical faith system lived out through you. Now, if I recall, your father was a scholar of Sanskrit.
Sanskrit, which is
the
ancient
religion of the Vedas,
of India.
And that's a big deal.
It is a big deal, and that had a language that has gradually faded into the background perhaps because of its complexity.
Yeah.
And other languages, such as more commonly spoken forms, such as Hindi and other regional languages like Bengali.
So they're related to it?
There are 14 languages in the Indian subcontinent, which are all offshoots.
And then many dialects.
Of Sanskrit. There were at least 576 dialects.
Wow.
As was established around the 1940s.
Yeah, very complex.
But the natives of the Deep South, the Dravidians have their own unique language, and particularly the language of Tamil, which does not have its origins in Sanskrit.
Okay. And then I believe there are a couple non-Indo-European languages, I think it's Finnish and Estonian and Hungarian, that are somewhat related to Sanskrit. Isn't that interesting?
The Indo-Persian, Indo-Asiatic, and East European extension of the language has many connections, roots, syllables that have a common thread in terms of what languages influence what. And so are the connected religious practices that gradually evolved and formed a series of practices that have evolved into a pattern of life called the Hindu faith.
Oh, right. Great. Well, I brought this symbol up first, which some may see sometimes around. I've seen different cars with the bumper sticker, or if you would go to like the temple here in Fort Myers, you would see it, or online or whatever. And it's a symbol of the triumvirate of the three main gods of Hinduism. Is that correct?
Om, often spelled A-U-M. Om has a deep resonance, and it is a sound that is supposed to come from the very core of your soul. Mm-hmm. The Om also depicts the Hindu Trinity in terms of meaning Brahma. So the Hindu Trinity consists of the creator, Brahma, Vishnu, the preserver, and Shiva is
the rebirth,
the destroyer who maintains the balance of the world. So U is for Vishnu, and is Maheshwara or Shiva.
Okay.
So A-U-M.
So it's the three together.
It's the three syllables.
And it's the first word of almost every...
Of many chants, mantras, the practices. So one of the greatest of of the Hindu mantras is called the Gayatri mantra. It is in the Rig Veda, and it starts with the letter Om. Om Bhuvarbhava Swaha Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yonah Prachodayat. It is just the realization of the cosmic nature of our beliefs and faith. And it is, the Gayatri mantra is uniquely non-denominational. It shows that this is, it is a prayer to light and the sun god, looking for enlightenment, knowledge, and fulfillment.
Okay. And I think you mentioned the cosmic nature, and I was thinking of the term Brahman, which comes in does it come into existence more after the Vedas? Kind of understanding that all of life, everything is part of the divine reality.
So
how would you explain Brahman?
If I may please digress just a tiny bit.
Please do.
Just a tiny bit to understand the evolution of Hinduism, which is a word that was only coined in the 19th century. You have to go to prehistory.
Okay.
To go to the India was probably inhabited by the Dravids and the natives, and the Aryans who came from the steppes of southern Asia and Central Asia, who gradually migrated towards the Indus Valley. So the Indus River was called the Sindhu River, Sindhu. That was the native name. And the Persians and later the Greeks called the people on the other side of the Sindhu River, they called them Sindhus, and eventually it morphed into the Hindus. So the people on the other side of the river in the entire subcontinent of India were called the Hindus.
So the Dravidians were in the south?
The Dravidians, their origins could be perhaps thousands and thousands of years before, and they may have other roots, but they were natives of India that may have been pushed back further and further south. And the Dravidians are have a much darker skin than the people
Aryans.
who call themselves the Aryans.
Right.
But
then everything is kind of a mix now.
It's a mishmash over the past 5,000 years. And the Aryans brought in many of the philosophical viewpoints and their own beliefs in their gods and demigods and their practices. And they probably eventually gelled and coexisted and formed some kind of meaningful overall, I would say, mixture of all these traits. And the Indus Valley civilization existed in the pre-Aryan era, and they were highly civilized, but their practices probably showed that there was already a nativist form of religion that respected the mother goddess, and also perhaps Shiva. So Shiva may have been there even well before the Aryans brought and established what the Hindus believe as a trinity.
Okay, cool. So, so things have evolved. So which we'll get to later, I think. So the Vedas were in Sanskrit, written after the Aryans had entered the picture.
So that is kind of a little bit of prehistory. But the Hindu faith, which was not called Hinduism, it was called Sanatana Dharma, meaning the eternal faith. And it was a series of views, a conglomerate of views and writings of many sages and seers over millennia that they eventually got categorized. But there was a thread of connection, even though separated by so many eons of time, that these scriptures evolved. So there are fundamentally two types of scriptures, but there is no thing as a prophet for the Hindu religion. There is no organized group that gives direction for this religious practice or a way of pattern of life. There's no holy book like the Bible or the Quran or the Torah that is the sum total of all.
Kind of like the canon that
Yeah,
this is.
but there are canonical works in the scriptures, and the scriptures are broadly categorized into what is called as Shruti and Smriti. And the Shruti is primarily the Vedas,
Okay.
because they are something that you see, experience, and then deliver through repetition. And so the Vedas were really transmitted over centuries. Orally, even though they had the textual version in Sanskrit. But basically the Brahmins,
Not this word here, but with
that is different from.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
The Brahmins, the Brahma, and the Brahmin.
I know.
Are three separate things. The Brahmins are the people, they were
More or less the priest and
the priestly class, and they were the
intellectuals,
who continued to pass this on among themselves. And that's how the Vedas maintained this continuous theme for so many centuries. So, but after the Vedas came other books. They're called the Smritis, and there are 18 of them, and they include the Ramayana and the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita. And the Upanishads were the most important of these, and they come under the word Vedanta. Vedanta. Anta means the end. Vedas means at the end of the Vedas.
Okay. And then the Bhagavad Gita is one of the stories in the
Bhagavad Gita is the
Upanishads.
crest jewel or the crown jewel of this epic, the Mahabharata. So there are two major epics. The Mahabharata is the longest poem in the world. It's exactly 8 times combined of the two great Greek.
The Iliad and
the Odyssey. It's
8 times
longer in combination, and it has got over 100,000 verses.
Wow!
And in that, about 700 verses belong to the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavat is the Lord. The Gita are the lines. It is the Lord's sayings. So he spoke. The Lord
Krishna.
is in the form of Krishna, and we can speak about Avatara briefly.
Avatar of Vishnu.
But he's an avatar of Vishnu, descended to do good in this world, and there are 10 such avatars.
And
he speaks with this warrior, Arjuna. Arjuna is one of 5 brothers who's fighting his other group of brothers, the Kauravas. These are the Pandavas. And he sees, I am looking around, and on the battlefield,
all these people are going to die.
I see these are my preceptors, my teachers, my brothers, my cousins, my uncles. I don't want to kill them, and I just want to give up. And that is when in the Gita, it's called the Upadesha, or the preaching of the Lord or Krishna to Arjuna about the meaning of dharma. And
dharma is your duty and your
dharma
position
is your
in
duty,
life.
and
since he's a Kshatriya, is that correct?
And that right, because he belongs to the
warrior caste. He needs to do the duty of a warrior.
And fulfill his dharma.
His duty in being that.
And
when he does,
and
in this life, the next life,
right, and then there is the fundamental belief that through the path of karma, which
we'll get
means
to that too.
we will get to that, and if you can do and fulfill your duties as designated by what your station in life is, then you would be doing the right thing. So do your duty based on the circumstances, and that's in the Gita, the essence of the Hindu beliefs of Brahman, Atman, and their relationship is explained by Krishna to Arjuna. And that is why Gita is considered as one of the most sacred
of
texts.
the texts, because it sums up a lot
It sums up in totality all the dialogues and the teachings in the
Vedas,
Vedanta, and also in the Puranas.
Yeah. Oh, okay, great. So we'll talk about that again a little later, but you mentioned the Brahman and the Atman. So
there are essentially, Hinduism is not necessarily a passive negating religion, because parts of it appear that way, and though it was influenced by Jainism and Buddhism, but there are 5 essential tenets of the Hindu faith. Okay. And it is, the first one is understanding what is the meaning of Brahman. Brahman is the ultimate cosmic consciousness that is existing out there. It has always existed. It has no start, no end. It is everything. It is universal. It's all pervasive. It is everything in the cosmos. And that is the unitary, powerful nature of Brahman, that
kind
everything,
of like the ocean.
It
permeates everything and is everywhere.
It is like a vast, endless ocean, and where all the droplets are eventually collecting back
into it, and we're each one of the droplets.
Each one of the droplets is a soul, the Atman,
which is the eternal.
So the Brahman, the Atman is like a droplet or drop of water, but the entire ocean that pervades is the Brahman, and this Atman is your soul. And the soul has some unique properties in the Hindu belief.
Such as?
So the next or the third phase is the understanding. Well, the third phase is the understanding that Atman and Brahman are essentially the same.
Yes. Okay.
They are dual, but at the same time monistic. That means that the Atman is essentially has the same qualities of the Brahman, but in the next phase, the mind has to realize that the Atman is deathless.
Yeah, it's eternal.
It is eternal,
indestructible,
and that it has a path that.
So when this body dies, the Atman continues.
Right. So the body is just a shell, and it is destructible, but the Brahman there is no beginning, no end. It's all pervasive. It is, and so is the Atman. It's indestructible, but the Atman has a journey, and that journey is. The journey is eventually becoming one with the Brahman.
The goal is, and we'll get to the moksha, or that eventual eventual union of the Atman with Brahman is the total eternal bliss, which may be defined differently in the various sister religions of the Hindu faith, but there is a path, and that's the path of karma, to reach this divine bliss or moksha. Moksha, you have to
so the Atman or the soul has the unique ability to transmigrate from one body to another, one shell to another, and it may be in the Hindu belief, it could be one life form to another life form. And it is dictated by karma. Karma is the sum total of all your experiences
and actions,
and
whether you do
it's the
your
causality
dharma.
of that action that makes all the difference. So it is, the karma is based on your action. It relates to your destiny.
And it relates to your dharma, correct? So
and dharma is a series of practices that is, dharma is what we spoke briefly about, that we will touch, but
so it's related to both your stage of life. When you're a child, you have a certain duty, correct?
In all stages of life,
and in all stages you have different duties, correct? And
different duties, yes.
And your different caste or varna also affects your duties, correct?
Right, and it's important to understand that most Hindus believe that what you are today is a sum total of of what you probably did in the past.
For many
multiple births perhaps, and you have the ability to reincarnate and switch, but that you can, if you choose certain ways and methods and processes, you might reach moksha and skip that
and just
in
get
this lifetime,
yeah.
or perhaps several lifetimes it might take, but there is, and during that process, much depends on your conduct in this life.
So moksha is then the liberation from the cycle of samsara.
Moksha is the liberation of the cycle of birth and death, and that is, samsara is the sum total of all of that. And when you break that cycle, then you ascend to that state of the highest consciousness that's possible. Okay. That's moksha.
Okay, great. Very good. I think this is very helpful for our, the students as they're understanding the main tenets of this faith.
And all the questions that you brought up, one has to speak briefly about the Hindu ethos, or the 5 sets of concepts that the Hindus believe. And these sets or concepts have evolved over a few thousand years, and those concepts have stayed the test of time. Mm-hmm. The Hindu faith has really gone through several phases of adjustment over the centuries. Mm-hmm. And the first major turmoil occurred when Buddhism came in, mm-hmm. because Hindu religious complexity did not appeal to many, and the Buddha configured everything, even though it was a non-theistic type of faith. But Hinduism got shook for many centuries, till the advent of reformers such as Shankara and Ramanuja and Madhava, and these people explained the Vedas, brought the essence of all those scriptures back in. And so Hindu faith by the 11th and 12th centuries again became resurgent. And then came the Islamic influence and the Islamic raiders and the conversions, till again the 14th, 15th, 16th centuries. There was the Bhakti movement, where there were a whole lot of reformers. Bhakti,
which is devotional worship.
Which is devotion. But to go back, which I was talking to you, are the Hindus believe in these fundamental concepts. One is the aspect of time. It's called a yuga, the cycles of time.
Okay, so there are 4 yugas.
So
like everything else in Hinduism, it's cycle. So it'll go around again and again, correct?
Time is has no beginning or no end. It is cyclical in the Hindu faith. And so these 4 yugas get repeated, and each yuga, by estimation, is supposed to be 4,320,000,000 years, and that is, in mythological terms, it is equal to 1 breath of Brahma. Okay.
1 breath of the creator god, Brahma.
Brahma.
Okay.
Right.
So,
so there are 4.
which of the
We are in the Kali Yuga now.
Kali, which is kind of the is that
It's
similar
the
to Kali,
dissonance
that
where
things get destroyed?
yes, and it is more the headwinds are ill winds, and so the ending is not good in the Kali Yuga.
Right.
Kali Yuga always ends in a near total destruction, and then the
Things start
cycles
over again.
restart again. It is actually the Krita or the Satya Yuga, the Yuga of truth. So Dwapara, Treta, and again Kali. It all continuously repeats itself. Each of these yugas are long periods of time, and the Hindus believe that if you go through this, that there is in a modern metaphysical sense that as we are understanding time is not a concept that starts at one point and ends when we look at our watch. Okay, the second is the 4 ashramas. Oh, we go right to that. Perfect.
Hey, as if we really worked this out ahead. We did. You gave me a great email, and I just try to put all these things in order.
Excellent. So these are the 4 stages of life that a Hindu or one pursuing the Hindu faith believes. And the first stage is the brahmacharya, or the phase of the student or the celibate.
Up to 25 years.
Up to the age of 25 and 25 to 50, if it's some variation. The second stage is grihastha. It is the stage where you are responsible for a family, you get married and perform the duties that you are as a good citizen. Mm-hmm. And after that is called vanaprastha, where you're actually retiring back towards the forest life and slowing things down. And the last one is renunciation. It's called sannyasa, where you give up, there's nothing to take.
You keep letting go of things.
You're letting go of things.
But you're blessing people as you're doing it.
Exactly. And it is the sannyasa, or the renunciation, that is highlighted to a much, much greater extent in Buddhism and Jainism.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Very good.
Then the next one, these are called the 4 goals of life. They are called the purusharthas. Purusha means the person or the individual. And arthas, it is the meaning of your life. Artha is the meaning. So the purusharthas
these are the goals or directions of life.
The goals and directions of life. And the first one...
They might not be in order here.
That's okay.
Is it dharma?
The 4... Well, dharma is the most important and dharma is a comprehensive religious and philosophical framework, and it is a scheme of right conduct, and in the broadest sense, it reveals the universal laws of nature and the cosmos, and it includes
how you treat others.
It
how you treat
includes
the world.
The concepts of justice, virtue, morality, righteousness, law, and duty. So it is all of these that form the essence of your life, and that is dharma.
Okay.
But there are other things that are important in your life. Is artha. Artha is the collection of wealth.
Right. It
is
being successful.
Being successful and being materialistic. Yeah. And materialism also leads to other things that make it possible that you could be supportive of your fellow human being. You can be charitable. I mean, you need artha just by being a celibate and completely negating yourself. It may be a path to moksha, but
You're not helping, you're not...
right. If you are passing through, this is the code of conduct. Okay. And
Kama?
Kama is pleasure. So
Enjoyment.
enjoyment in
Sensual as
life,
well as-
sensual pleasure is an essential part. Vatsyayana is the one who wrote about the sensual science in great depth. It is the Kama Sutra written by Vatsyayana that forms, it goes into very detailed explanation about the role of Kama. So, and then, and the most importantly is moksha or liberation. Moksha is the transcending of beyond life and death, as we talked about. It's a level of spiritual poise where essentially your soul becomes one with the almighty soul, the Brahman.
Great.
So we could speak about the varnas or the castes.
The castes.
So the caste or the caste system, as it's castigated, is unique to the Indian subcontinent. So varna, it means group. Varna could also mean color. So varna is a caste system where there's a hierarchy. So the highest caste was the Brahmins. And the Brahmins were the priests, the teachers, the preceptors, the accumulators of knowledge.
And just notice it's with an I in it in English.
Yeah.
So it's different than Brahma, who is without an N at the
creator.
end, the creator God,
Right.
and Brahman, which is the ultimate reality and divine force, consciousness of the whole universe. Brahmins are the priests, the scholars. And they happen to be then, if you said it's color, did they happen at the beginning at least to be more the lighter skinned?
So when you look in a historical context,
Yeah.
the Aryans were lighter skinned
Yeah.
and the Dravidians were darker skinned, and that kind of color discoloration persists. And it's quite conceivable, as have many great Hindu authors have indicated, that color played a role in
how the caste system was set up.
In perhaps delegating many of the darker colors to
the lower,
to the lesser roles of society.
So we're going to have a discussion in class or online. I can't remember if it's online or in class, where you're going to be talking about discrimination, caste, and how this fits together. Is it a religious? There are some religious principles in it that are noble, and then there are some things that can cause problems. Now, I know modern India has tried to alleviate some of the issues by creating, if I'm not mistaken, certain proportions of college to go to some of the lower castes, etc.
Right. So I think that is a very fundamental and important question. So other than the Brahmins, we had the warrior class, the Kshatriyas, who were the defenders, who were the rulers, and the kings and the princes.
Like Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita.
Like Arjuna, the warrior. Okay. And the Vaishyas were the merchants and the agriculturists and the landowners. But the Shudras were of the lowest class. And these were the subordinates to all of the other classes, and they performed the lesser deeds of cleansing and cleaning, and they were kept at a distance. Mm-hmm. But they were, unfortunately, there ended up being a vast number of people who never fit into any of these castes, and they were called the untouchables or the outcasts or the Dalits.
Dalits, yeah.
And going back to your question, India's constitution, which came to be around 1950 when it became a republic, was based on predominantly the American Constitution, that all people are created, all humans are created equal.
India is the largest democracy in the world.
Largest democracy in the world, but and also on the British Constitution, and they took a lot of fundamental parts of the practices and the cultural traits of the Indian subcontinent. So if you look at a country like India, if you ask the vast number of millions of Muslims, the vast majority, in my opinion, would say, what a great country to live in because of the constitutional protection. And Ambedkar, who participated in establishing the Constitution, was himself an untouchable, a Dalit, but he rose to the highest levels of education and was, but he was incredibly important in India's constitutional, in writing the full constitution. But these practices go back to thousands of years, and that sort of discrimination has pervaded through every system.
Well, just like in the United States, on the books, right?
And there are parallels to that.
Right. We are legally, everyone is to be treated equally, correct? And not, and discrimination is against the law, and yet
and subtle discrimination is very easy.
Culturally, we are still struggling with that concept. There is still racism in the United States, both institutional, systemic issues, as well as just personal, relational issues, right? And so that's true as well in India, you would say?
So, some reparations have been made by India, by the people and the government, by giving preferential treatment to these backward classes, to these scheduled castes, to these Dalits, to these untouchables who are in the lowest rung of the social ladder.
Right.
And many of them have become strong, but it is always the same claim even after 70 years that they would continue to need that preferential treatment, whereas now the Brahmins feel discriminated because, and so are the Kshatriyas, so there is this tug of war between the groups. But caste system, the only way it will perhaps eventually disappear, it will take a long period of time. I think economic equality will ultimately change it. So today in the New York Times was an editorial about this, about being in the lowest caste, the untouchable Dalit, for a very large US company. It's in the New York Times editorial, that the Indians who predominantly came, who migrated to the United States, were of the upper caste because they had the education.
And they had the opportunity.
And now in a large software company, it is because these Indians are in the highest hierarchical positions, a Dalit has put in a lawsuit saying that I am being discriminated even in the United States because of this caste system, and because I'm afraid to call myself a Dalit, and if they find out, it is the people who would be discriminating are Americans who consider themselves as unique and preferred because they belong to a higher caste.
Yeah. So
I'm just giving you.
No, this is great stuff. That helps me understand it more myself. On a personal note, do you know what caste you
Yes,
come from?
I am a Brahmin.
Oh, okay. Is your wife also?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it is very common for the caste to stay together. So in around perhaps about 300 BCE or 500 BCE, there was a great scripture written by Manu. It's called Manu Smriti. So before that scripture came in, Manu's code of ethics, Manu's code of conduct. So it's called Manu's code. He put in the stamp that you are stuck in your caste by birth. And that was not there before Manu.
So this is what made...
And this was the greatest disservice through the caste system, where you are, once you're born, you're designated and you can almost never get out. So, and that became a terrible thing. So the lower caste remained lower. Whatever you did, even if you attained immeasurable wealth by whatever reason, which did not usually happen because the varnas, the groups,
it was
were
pretty
so,
well stuck. Yeah.
Right. But but I think India has made enormous
progress,
changes,
yeah.
enormous strides. And here it is the Hindu way of life with these tenets is practiced by 1.3 billion people. The Hindus are not necessarily a proselytizing religion, but it has spread to many parts of Southeast Asia.
Great.
And it has gone to all over the world,
Yeah.
but their practices are slightly different.
Okay. We're going to have to move on. We've been doing really well. I mean, this has been very enlightening to me as well. Again, every time I talk with you, Chris. But there are different paths to enlightenment or to moksha or liberation, correct? These are the different yogas?
Right. Yoga means yoke, or it means the joining of your soul to the
this
Brahman.
discipline.
But it is through the discipline, and
That
the
you are
four
able to-
paths of discipline are the four paths or the four yogas.
And some are used in combination at times, correct?
And you could follow uniquely one path, but it
Many-
is almost impossible.
Yeah.
So the bhakti path is the path of absolute devotion.
And that's more of the pilgrimages to temples to...
It is, simply a simple pilgrimage or multiple pilgrimages or
worship.
or total worship. It is beyond just simply the chanting and utterances. It is a state of mind and realizing that you're giving your soul and reaching a stage of absolutely connecting devotionally to the divine. And that divine is given usually a form in bhakti.
So
A
more
form,
of
there is a
different
god,
gods,
right?
yeah.
There is a different god, and it could be somebody like Rama, Krishna. Usually, it's not Brahma. It could be Shiva.
Right. So they'll be watching a video, and I've gone to the temple at Tirupati, Sri
Venkateshwara.
Swami.
Venkateshwara Swami. Swami means, yeah.
I keep trying to say
Yeah.
it right.
Supreme.
But that was fascinating. And so they'll be watching a video of that, and that's kind of the bhakti path,
Right.
correct?
And the bhakti path, and so when you talk about it's really not a polytheistic religion because you are looking at the fundamentals of the beliefs that are behind the screen.
Brahman behind each of these,
Yeah.
these different personifications of the Brahman.
The
in
Brahman
different
is
forms.
above and beyond the Hindu Trinity.
Okay.
The Hindu Trinity gives a form and a grasp to the ordinary human being.
Right.
But again, these are the paths
So
that
bhakti usually has temple, God, stuff
temple
like
God, but absolute devotion on a level that just is simply not praying.
Right.
It is completely
Dedication.
dedicated and giving in totality.
Do you think many? It seemed like I think at that temple near Tirupati, 40 million people a year.
It could very be. It's
It's
one of the
one of
richest
the-
temples in the world.
It's more than Disneyland.
Oh yeah.
More
It-
people
it's
than Disneyland go to that. I mean, so I was just wondering, is this the most common path in India at the present, or is it the path of karma?
No, the majority follow what is called the path of
multiple?
bhakti, but also majority follow the path of convenience.
Okay, whichever is.
And so just because you go to a temple, such as the Tirupati temple, if there's a minister who has taken in graft $100,000 and he gives $1,000 or $10,000 and says, I am absolved, it doesn't happen, he's going nowhere.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, it is not
There's-
uncommon.
No.
Because people feel, they find solace and comfort going to temples, but it is the path of devotion is above and beyond just simply going to temples.
So then another path is, let's go to karma on the other side. As I think that's the one you mentioned that in the past is the one that you focus on more yourself. Is that correct?
That is very well. I to be very honest, I have a very a view of the world that has been modified by my own experiences.
Between science and
between
philosophy.
science and philosophy, not necessarily beliefs, through the accumulation of information over the years and understanding and learning from a variety of peoples, what we interact nowadays with the ability to have conversations with so many diverse peoples of diverse faiths, of diverse beliefs. I think the sum total of my experiences lead me in a certain direction. But I certainly have been tamed and partly polished by my culture and my heritage that I respect deeply, and also by the faith in which I was born. You can be anybody from a secular to agnostic to an agnostic to an atheist and still be called a Hindu. Okay. But the karma yoga
is selfless,
giving. It's a path of alleviation of human suffering, a path of giving, a path of charity, a path of unselfish hard work.
Doing good things for others.
Doing good things and good deeds and others.
And not considering. It's like I'm not trying to get an advantage out of it myself.
Right. So I tell my own children, not to digress too much.
No, that's okay. This is good.
If the most important thing in my life is to lose the fear of death. The fear of death and the potential guilt that is placed through faiths, etc., of the afterlife and what might be the consequences and what you might end up causes a lot of discomfort, burden, and it distorts and agonizes your spiritual core. If you are unafraid and if you are a karma yogi, if you do the right things in life, and if you are understanding of your environment, not just your fellow human beings, it is life of all kinds, from the forest to the trees to the fish to the animals. I mean, it's not just, it is loving earth. It is maybe a mixture of Confucian philosophy and maybe a little bit of karma yoga. So I'm not ascending or descending anywhere, personally speaking. So that is my view.
Okay, great. So karma yoga is the path of doing for the sake of others.
For the sake of others. It is selfless, giving oneself to the betterment of others.
Okay.
Jnana yoga is sometimes considered the highest level of yoga. It is the use of the intellect. It is the ability to rationalize. And it is the ability to have understanding through your experiences and to contemplate in great depth and reach a level of understanding that you're able to see the path much more clearly, where you may be able to attain.
In a sense, your father, being the scholar of Sanskrit, was following that path to an extent, correct?
Right. And he was following his fundamental duties and Hindu dharma, and he was an extensive scholar. Yeah.
Okay, and then Raja?
The Raja yoga is the yoga of
meditation.
It is the essential duties that have to be performed by the ruling class.
Oh, okay, so
the
it's
warrior
royal
class.
Yoga.
It is your when Krishna said to Arjuna, it is you have to perform the duty of fighting.
Yes, and don't worry about
get rid of this adharma, this bad things in life. That is their conduct, and that is Raja Yoga.
Okay, so meditation is in Jnana Yoga then, or?
So in the Raja Yoga, so it is actually detailed spiritual practices, and they are psychic exercises. So Patanjali wrote an extensive dissertation on what is called as the Yoga Sutras.
Okay.
And yoga that has come to the Western world is based on the Raja Yoga, and one of the most common type of yoga is called the Hatha Yoga.
Hatha, yeah, which
Hatha.
is the one that you
One-
go to a yoga class.
Yeah,
That's basically.
it is more physical functions of flexibility, stretching, breathing, and all of those, and everything else between all the other groupings of yoga are really offshoots of that.
Okay, great. Well, that is very helpful in an explanation. Dr. Chari, thank you so much. We're going to have
Thank
to
you
end.
for this again, this
Yeah,
special
no, this
privilege.
is good.
This is something that I.
If students in my in my class at FGCU would like to learn more, can I have them contact you by email or
by
something like that?
email. You have my phone number. I'd love to. If
Well,
anybody
I
has
don't
a
know if I
question,
want to give it to 7
if you have a
guys.
good student who might be of an inquiring mind and
Okay.
wants to challenge me,
Okay.
I would love to, because I think for me, conversation, an exchange of views and ideas, which is so unfortunately being lost at warp speed.
Yes.
People can't communicate, but
No.
you can have diverse views, but you can always talk and discuss and be civil and exchange information.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Chari. It was great having you. I hope for Contemporary World Religions this fall, you're learning quite a bit from this interview and this time together, and also how maybe to have a religious dialogue with people from different faiths and backgrounds, rather than to really listen and try to seek to understand each other, rather than just to tell everybody off, which we're doing a lot in our society today. So I appreciate that so much
Thank you,
from
John.
you.
Thank you, and I hope I have helped your students.
Oh, very much so. They will truly appreciate this.